Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Man, do we have a gem of an episode today? I am so excited about this episode. You know, you hear me often talk about getting outside of our comfort zones, and that's how we grow. And today, quite frankly, is the realization of me getting out of my own comfort zone and getting out of my own way. Today I've got a great guest. Garry Ridge is with us, and Garry has been on my dream guest list for quite some time, and I finally got out of my own way and actually invited him to be on the podcast. And guess what? He said yes. Obviously, I wouldn't be talking to you about him if he hadn't said yes. But let me just tell you a little bit about Garry because he's just so fascinating. Garry Ridge is Chairman Emeritus and retired CEO of the WD-40 company. So, the little blue can with the red top, creates lubrication, stops squeaks, and so much more. I've followed Garry for quite some time, really because of his commitment to a people-centered culture and his commitment to really driving a great culture. And so in this conversation, we talk about the key components of a great culture, and we talk about how the mindset of most companies is a microwave culture mindset as opposed to a crockpot culture mindset. So there's a lot of different elements there, and he shares so much wisdom. He talks about belonging. He talks about connecting the heart and the head of the people. We talk a little bit about tribal culture, and not like tribal in the indigenous population sense, but really tribal in the sense of like the tribal values and how the tribal system works, and why that's a great model for culture. We also talk about executing strategy. And really at the end, we talk a little bit about succession and how he planned for his own succession. Make sure that you key in on the length of time that he planned for his own succession and what was involved right there. And we also then talk about his new book that's coming out next year. We don't talk about it much today, just the title of it, what it's about. And I'm so excited to share Garry Ridge with you today. And I hope that you really get a lot from this episode, because Garry talks a lot, not just about company culture, but about leadership and how important it is to be a leader that coaches. And oh, by the way, we here at Impact Leadership, we do have a program that we can help you with creating leaders as coaches. And so just a little side note and shameless plug for our program, because it's a really great one. But we talk a lot about leadership and culture, and he has some great insights that he's going to share with us here today. So let me just get out of the way. Let's get into the conversation right now with Garry Ridge. Garry, welcome to In the Growth Space. It has been a long time coming. I've had you on my guest wish list for a long time, so I'm really grateful that you're here today.
G'day, David. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me along.
Oh, but my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Well, I would love to hear the story that got you into helping organizations with culture and leadership, because you've got such a great journey, and the company that you worked for a long time is really a household name.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I was born in Sydney, Australia, and in 1987, I was given the opportunity to open WD-40 Company's subsidiary in Australia. I'd known the company for a few years. I'd actually worked for the licensee of the brand down there. At that time, the company was really starting to seriously think about, how do we take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world? It was a very established brand in the US, but it had sprinkles of business around the world. So I joined the company. in 87, opened the subsidiary, worked a lot in Asia through to 94. And in 94, I was invited to move to the United States by the CEO at the time to help, again, build out our global network. So I moved to the United States. And then in 1997, he retired. And for some silly reason, the board of directors of a public company thought that this Aussie bloke might be okay to lead a US public company. And that was really the kind of pivoting point, David, in that the culture at WD-40 then wasn't broken. It was great, but it was built for a company that was really more inward than outward. And there's an interesting story, and I talk about it in my new book that'll be out next year. But I was flying on an aeroplane from Los Angeles to Sydney. And as you do when you're on airplanes, you read stuff.
Right.
And I read two statements that really triggered my thinking. The first one, I think, is attributed to the Dalai Lama, and it is, our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And I thought, that is such a simple statement, but so true. And what I saw around me was a lot of hurt people in companies. The second thing I read was from Aristotle, and it said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And I thought, well, duh. If you can create an environment where people actually enjoy what they're doing, so you have high will of the people and you have a pretty good strategy, then the outcome has got to be a lot better than if you have a pretty good strategy and a stinky culture. Right. But I still didn't know how to do it. And when I got back to San Diego, I was reading the local paper and I read about a program at the University of San Diego. It was a master's degree in leadership. And I went to an information session. So enter the third huge influence in my life, which was Ken Blanchard, Dr. Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. And Ken and USD had put this program together. And Ken said something. He said, most MBA programs get people in the head. We got to start to get people in the heart. And I went, bingo. So here I am, 2 years in as CEO of WD-40 Company, a US public company. And I go back to school. I went back to school. And I enrolled in this master's degree at USD. And for the next 2 years, I confirmed what I thought I knew and learned what I didn't know and started to implement the ingredients, if you will, to build a great culture in an organization. And the reason I had to do that is I couldn't do it on my own. I'm consciously incompetent. I'm probably wrong and roughly right in most circumstances. And I need all the help I can get. And I had to learn how to get that help. But at the same time, in doing that, how did I enrich the people's lives that I, one, had the privilege to lead, and two, all these souls that came to work every day? Because I really believe if we can send people home happy from organizations, we'll build a happier world. And by golly, we need a happier world. So that's a bit of a long story, but it gives you the framework.
No, I love that so much because I think that, you know, having a focus on people's hearts and people in general is so unusual in our day to day. I mean, most of the times when we're thinking about business, we're thinking all in our head, but connecting the head and the heart, I love that. I guess, was there a pivotal moment for you that you really thought that, gosh, you know, if we can capture people's heart, we're going to be able to really create something really great here?
Well, I went back to those two statements I shared with you. And, you know, again, let's not count heads in organization. Let's count hearts.
Yes,
and,
I love that.
And it's really about that is, you know, I often say, imagine a place where you go to work every day. You make a contribution to something bigger than yourself. You learn something new. You're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Now, simplistically, as people, there are three things that I think are really important. Number one, we want to know and be shown we belong. Yes. Anybody watching or listening to us today has left a relationship, a party, or an organization because they didn't feel like they belong. So how do you make sure people belong? Secondly, people want to know they matter. So what am I doing in the organization or in life that's really making a difference? What meaningful work am I doing? And thirdly, people want to make choice. They want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to make their own choices. So how do you set up a system within an organization where people don't have to quack up the hierarchy to this, big King Mallard duck to get permission to do something? How do you
Yeah.
empower them? And by having a compelling set of values in the
Mm,
organization, they protect people and they set them free.
mm,
So people want to belong, people want to matter, and people want to know they make choice. And if we can,
mm.
and this sounds pretty, like, yeah, okay, I get that. It's simple. It's really
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Right. Right.
And time is not your friend. You know, you have to, a friend of mine is Charlie Maloof. He owns Broad River retail stores, Ashley furniture stores out in,
Oh yeah.
Charlotte and all that. And he had a wonderful quote that I can never not quote. He says, "You cannot microwave culture. It takes a crock pot approach." And that
Oh,
is
I
so true.
love that. I love that. A crock pot approach. Yeah. Wow. And but how did you manage that tension then of the crock pot approach with the typical 90-day cycles of a public company? That's always been curious to me.
Yeah, that was an interesting journey. It took a while for our number one investors to understand that we're not here to run our business in 90-day intervals. Now,
Mm,
that's not an excuse. I mean,
sure.
you have to have a clearly defined strategy with clearly defined goals over time. But what early on, one of our biggest shareholders early on, I said to them, I'm not smart enough to try and lead a business in 90-day intervals. And the investment, the portfolio manager said, I'm glad you're not dumb enough to try. And again, I used to say to our investors, don't follow us on a quarter to quarter basis. If you
Yeah.
do, then you're not here for the right reasons. We're here to build an
Mm,
enduring company over time. Now,
mm,
you have to say that, but you have to perform as well because they
sure.
they won't believe it forever.
Right.
So,
Right.
but if you think about what the outcome of performance, David, you and I can probably write a pretty good strategic plan.
Sure.
We have enough knowledge and experience to do that. So we
Sure.
take that strategic plan along to some smart professor at Harvard, and we say, mark up our strategic plan, professor. And he
Mm,
said, oh, really nice strategic plan there, David and Garry. I'm going to give you 60 out of 100 because most strategic plans are 50-50 anyhow. But yours is really good. Okay, great. But if when we go to execute that strategic plan, only
mm,
20% of our people get up every day and are passionate about executing it, they feel like they belong, they know they're making a contribution, 20 times 60 is 1,200. There's your outcome.
yeah.
Wow. If 80% of your people go to work every day and are passionate about executing against it because they feel like they belong and they matter and they can make a choice, 80 times 60, 6/8 of 4,800.
Yeah.
So it's the will of the people times the strategy. And unfortunately, most
Mm,
leaders don't get it. If you don't
right.
have people going to work every day who are really doing what they love because they're being loved and treated well and they're learning,
Mm-hmm.
now,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not going to maximize the outcome. Now, but
Yeah.
it takes time. And a lot of people think that you can sprinkle fairy dust over an organization and change the culture.
Right.
Can't do
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
also, they think, building great culture is about popcorn machines, pizzas, and margaritas on a Friday afternoon. It's not that either. Some of
Yeah.
those things are there to bring people together, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand what you need to do to build a great culture.
Yeah. I love that. And I guess my next question then is like, what do you need to do then to build a great culture?
So, years and years ago, obviously, when I was a young lad in high school back at Des Moines Boys High School in Sydney, Australia, my science teacher gave me a petri dish. And the science teacher said, what we're going to do is we're going to grow culture in this petri dish.
Mm,
Now, there are two things that are important. Number one, what are the ingredients? And
mm,
number two, how are you going to take care of the petri dish? So let's
mm,
talk about the ingredients first. The ingredients to build a great culture is you have to have a people first mindset.
mm,
You want to be a coach, not a manager. Managers manage bank accounts. Great leaders coach their people. You have to have brave accountability and behavior, which means you've got to be not only caring and loving enough to reward and applaud people for doing great work, you have to be brave enough to redirect behavior that's putting toxin in the petri dish. My friend Ron Carusi, who wrote a great book called To Be Honest, says, it's unfortunate that most people want to protect their own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development. So
Wow, yeah.
those are those tough conversations. You have to have a clearly defined and authentic purpose. Why do we get up every day? You have to have a hierarchical set of values. What are our values and which are more important than the other? And that's what gives people the ability to make choices, because they make choices around the values. You have to have transparency and a simple vision. You have to have learning moments that reduce fear. So let's throw out failure, because we know failure is not a motivator. Let's call these opportunity learning moments, and let's amplify the great learning moments and learn from the not so great learning moments. You have to have belonging, acceptance, and connectedness. And you have to have the 4 pillars of care. I care about my people. Candor. I'm candid with my people. And candor means no lying, no faking, no hiding. Most people don't lie. They fake and hide because of fear.
Sure.
You have to have accountability. What are you going to hold me accountable for? And what are you going to hold yourself accountable for? And then we have to have responsibility. How are we going to responsibly execute against what we do? So put all those ingredients in the petri dish. Watch them every day, and as a leader, be brave enough to fuel the good elements of those ingredients and to treat the toxins as soon as they get in there, because the toxins will kill the good ingredients faster than you would ever believe. So there it is. It's simple, not easy,
right?
But time is not your friend.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that as I think about those ingredients, one of the things that caught my ear, I was just writing a note down, and that is creating leaders within the organization who not only buy into the values and can live by the values, but I think also the coaching mindset. I think that is so important, because coaching is really getting the best out of our people and helping them to get the best out of themselves.
That's our role. As leaders, a great coach is committed to helping the player get an A. So a great coach firstly has to know what it takes to win. Is brave. They know the game. They don't run onto the field to kick the ball. We've never seen a great coach do that.
Right.
They spend a lot of time on the sideline watching the play because they don't want to be micromanagers. They add value to the player with feedback. They never go to the podium and pick up the prize. And here's the real rub. They spend a lot of time in the stinky locker room, because it's the stinky locker room is where the real essence of understanding and psychological safety is built. And a lot of leaders don't spend enough time in the stinky locker room. They think it's above them. That's where they go. So those are the attributes of a great coach. And they're only there, your leader's only there for one reason: to help you step into the best version of your personal self. And if you dedicate yourself to doing that every day, if you have a really, really, really great team, guess what? You're going to win more games than you lose.
Exactly.
Duh.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Well, how does a coach, how does a leader in an organization then create that psychological safety in the locker room? How do they do that? How did you do that, Garry?
Well, firstly, you need to reduce fear. And the major element of that was we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments.
Yeah, that's
Number two is we have a clearly defined set of values. So, what are the values that drive our behavior? But importantly, we're very, very clear on what we're going to hold each other accountable for, so we can have those candid conversations that stop people from faking and hiding, because people fake and hide. A number of years ago, I wrote a book with my mentor, Ken Blanchard, and it's called Helping People Win at Work. And the byline is, I'm not here to mark your paper. I'm here to help you get an A. The big part about that is, what does an A look like? So
Mm,
most people let people down because we haven't taken time to understand
yeah.
clearly what we're going to hold each other accountable for. And
Hmm.
Dr. Amber Selkin is the team's mental performance coach out at Notre Dame. And I love what she says. She says accountability is doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it to the standard you're supposed to do it to.
Mm,
Now, my challenge for people with us today is, are the people you lead very clear about what they're supposed to do? Are they very clear about when the deadline or what we have to? And have we taken time to say, this is what an A looks like to the
yeah.
standard we're supposed to do it to? Then, if
Yeah.
that's clear, my job as your coach is very clear. I'm here to help you do that.
Right.
So, how do I
Right.
help get rid of barriers and get things out of the way? I'm just here to
Yeah.
help you. That's why
Yeah.
I get up every day.
I love that. I love that. Well, and to me, that all of those come together in a multiple. I like talking in terms of behaviors, and one of the things that I hear you saying is that coach then not only has to get clear on expectations and help the person to get clear on expectations, but they also have to make sure that they know what success looks like. Because if my dad used to say, if you aim at nothing, you're sure to hit it, right? So I think we have to make sure that we get clear on expectations. We also need to know what success looks like, and quite frankly, I also hear you in that saying we have to practice blameless problem solving. So
Yeah.
let's don't call it failure. Let's call it learning. It's a problem. It's something that we can solve, and let's find out what happened, and let's get
Yeah.
it solved together. So
Last year I was over at Notre Dame at the school there, and I was looking down on that wonderful stadium,
yeah,
and 82,000 people sit in that stadium.
yeah,
And I thought, what are those people in that stadium there to do? They're there to be entertained and, have enjoyment from watching a game. So the game's about to start, and the team runs on the field, but someone forgot to put up the goalposts. So what happens? The team run around confused. They don't know how to win.
right,
And the
yeah,
customers in the bleachers are now not getting entertained or not getting the value they came to get. So it's pretty clear. Oh,
mm-hmm.
and guess what else happened? The referee forgot to turn up. So how do they know what values to play by? And the coaches are asleep in the locker room. So who's going to help them? So when you think
Yeah,
about it, if there's no goalpost, what happens? The team just develops churn. They get
mm-hmm.
tired, frustrated. They go
Sure,
home. Eventually, they leave the team because they don't matter and they don't feel
right,
like they're belonging. And all the
right.
people who paid the money for the service are not getting satisfied. So they go buy something else from someone else. And
Yeah,
eventually, the team fails, the organization fails, and it's all over.
right, right. Gary, you have talked about belonging, and I think that since some of the reading that I've done, you talk about creating a tribal culture, and I'd love for you to speak into that a little bit because I think too often we think of culture. I've at least heard it talked about in terms of like a family, but really you talk about a tribal culture, and I think there's something different there about belonging to a tribe, and I love to have you share a little bit about that if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. And, our tribal culture was not a reflection of any indigenous group or, what they
Yeah,
stand
no,
for. It,
no,
it was a reflection of tribalism that goes back to the beginning of mankind.
yeah,
And when I started to think about this, I actually did interview and have conversations with leaders of tribes over time.
okay,
And I identified that there were 7 attributes
mm,
that kept people together.
mm,
And those attributes are number one, and this is really interesting. The number one attribute of a great culture is learning and teaching. And let me
interesting,
let me share why I believe that. If we were to go back thousands of years and observe a tribal meeting of the Indigenous Australians where I come from, what would the tribal leader be doing? The tribal leader would be teaching
mm,
the tribe members to throw a boomerang. Why? Well, the boomerang was the tool of survival. So it's very clear our number one big circle responsibility as a coach and a leader is to be a forever learner and forever teacher, helping those we have the privilege to lead to survive or to grow. The second one is values. They all had values, and these values, I'm a great fan of The Godfather, and I love the Godfather movies. And, if you think about it, in those movies, they had values. Now, they may not be the values we had, and we may not want to align with it. But I tell you what's very clear. There were consequences. So, the next one was belonging. If you think about tribes over time, they had identification of belonging. They were whatever they did. In organizations now, the tribes, we wear shirts with our company name on, and we identify to a group. The next thing they were future focused. What do I mean by that? If a tribe is not looking at what they need to look to the future to survive, they will absolutely go extinct. Imagine if you had a tribe back in whatever day when Ugg the caveman was around, and they had their tribal area next to a lake, and the lake was drying up. If the tribal leaders weren't looking for the next lake, when the lake dried up, there would be no water. They would die. They recognize specialist skills. I love Fiji, and we go there often, and I sit and talk with the Fijians, beautiful people. And that they made it very clear to me that each person in the tribe has a specialized skill. Some are better fishermen, some are better hunters, some are better gatherers, some are better at succession planning. So in an organization, a great tribe, we have to say there are specialized skills. We're warriors. Every tribe has warriors. That doesn't mean we're fighting the enemy. It means we're fighting a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other, the just cause of a tribe. And then finally, celebration. We need to celebrate. So they're the attributes of a tribal culture. The cornerstone is learning and teaching, and all those others bring us together as a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other.
Boy, I so love that. And I really love the fact that it's the leader's responsibility to both learn and teach. It's a constant thing. And I often will talk to the emerging leaders that I get to work with and share with them that leadership is not a destination. It's a constant journey. And just when you think you've arrived, that's the new departure point. And I think of leadership in terms of departure points and arrival points, and that never ends. And so I love that about what you shared about a tribal culture.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Michelangelo had a great saying, "Encaro imparo," which means learning I always am.
Gosh, I love that.
Learning I always am.
That's that probably is a quote card that we'll have to use from this episode. I love that. So Garry, once you have a great culture and you've taken the time and you've kind of used that crock pot approach, how do you protect it then? How do you protect that great thing that you've created in in an organization?
You live it every day, from the top down and from the bottom up. You embed the behaviors, the expectations. And as I said, you can't sprinkle fairy dust and run away. Yeah. This is a full-time job. I mean, it's simple. Remember I said it's simple. It's not easy. Right. And time is not your friend. We spend thousands of hours reviewing our strategy, but how many thousands of hours should we be spending actually listening to, being in that stinky locker room, getting feedback from our people, and make sure the video matches the script. A lot of companies out there, their video doesn't match their script. Oh, we have a lovely set of values. Look at them up at the wall. Yeah, but the behavior looks like this.
Right.
And you've got to be brave as a leader to protect it, because a great culture is something to be coveted. And as the leader, it's your responsibility to ensure. So make sure you're getting regular feedback, that the toxins aren't sneaking in. And then you act on them, because if your video doesn't match your script, everyone will say this is BS. They don't believe in this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that so oftentimes, kind of going back to the toxins coming in, sometimes we have to make sure that if toxins have come in, we have to get them out as quickly as we possibly can. And I think that's where a lot of leaders, like can draw back, and they don't want to do that too quickly. But I think it's a necessary thing to be able to protect a good culture.
Well, what I quoted my friend Ron Carusi, they're protecting their own comfort zone at the
Yeah.
expense of other people's development and the saving
Mm.
of the culture. And if you
Hmm.
think about, I invented this person called Al, or it may be Alice, the soul sucking CEO.
Yeah.
And this person has some behaviors, and this could be a leader, but they have a big ego and little empathy. Their ego eats their empathy instead of their empathy eating their ego. They're a micromanager. They think they're
Mm.
corporate royalty. They love a fear-based culture. They're a master of control. They know it all. They have all the answers, even the wrong ones. They don't value learning. They must always be right. They hate feedback, and they don't keep their commitments. These are the toxins of behavior that get into this petri dish that kill it
Mm.
very, very, very quickly. So
Yeah.
whoever's out there today, don't be a soul sucking leader.
I love that.
Be a servant leader, someone who loves their people. And Ken Blanchard says, saying you're a servant leader is a good start, but it's your behavior that makes it real for people.
Hmm. Boy, isn't that the truth? It's what you do and not what you say all the time. I mean, I can say one thing, but if my behaviors don't match it, then nobody's gonna really listen to
Yeah.
me. Boy, I love that. You know, you talked about protecting our comfort zone. And I'm curious, I'm always talking to leaders about getting outside of their comfort zone. What's something that you're doing right now, Garry, that's getting you outside of your comfort zone so that you can personally grow?
Oh, I just finished writing my new book. That took me way outside my comfort zone. Thank God I had
Uh,
a good writing partner.
yeah, I love that.
Because I'm not good at. I have the stories,
Yeah.
but that's it. But I think the comfort zone can be challenged by this challenge. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
I love that question.
So what are you going to do today for the first time? Now,
Mm-hmm.
I've already fulfilled mine today because this is the first time I've ever had the privilege and honor of being with you.
Yeah,
So
that's
to
so
me,
great.
that was a great, a great fulfillment of that. So,
I love
and
that.
the other thing that I think that, most people don't know when they're getting out of their comfort zone. We are just these basic human beings bumbling our way down the walkway of life. And in the bushes are these thieves that come in and they grab us and they take us into the bushes. The
Yeah.
thieves of behavior that I described with Al. Interestingly enough, I'm just reaching here to show you something. I have this little notebook that I write stuff on every day.
Yeah.
But on the front, it says, I have this little reminder. Am I being the person I want to be right now?
Mm.
And I say, who is that person? And I read this because I remind myself of this is the person I want to be, because the world will impact me to be other than this. So I say,
Mm.
I want to be grateful. I want to be caring. I want to be empathetic. I want to be reasonable. I want to be a listener. I want to be fact based. I want to have a balanced opinion. I want to be curious. I want to be a learner. And I want to
Mm.
throw sunshine, not a shadow.
Oh, I
And
love
I've
that.
had this little thing on my notebooks for years
Yeah.
because I need to continually remind myself.
Mm.
And you would say, well, why do you need to do that? Because the world impacts us.
Sure. Sure. Wow, I love that. So I want to just remind the emerging leaders and all leaders who are watching or listening today. I think that's a great reminder that we always need reminding, and we have to put it in front of ourselves so that we keep hearing those positive messages and keep reminding ourselves who we want to be. I just really love that. There's one last thing I wanted to ask you, Garry, and you started off in talking about the handoff from the previous CEO so many years ago to you. And I know that there are a lot of leaders right now in that position of handing off. And so I'm kind of curious about, was there anything that he did to hand off to you or to prepare you for that handoff in leadership?
He's he was a great leader, but his style was completely different to mine.
Mm,
So he helped me understand the power of what we had as a brand. But
okay.
as you know, I stood down as CEO of WD-40 nearly 18 months ago. I was
Yes.
chairman and CEO for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I thought was important when I was handing over to my successor was firstly being prepared.
Yeah.
We started that process 8 years ago,
Oh, wow.
and we said we wanted someone that was going to be internal to the company, and someone that absolutely um, was committed to culture being an amazing multiplier. And Steve, who's our CEO now, is that person. Now, he's not me. He doesn't execute it like me, and
Sure.
that's okay. I mean,
Sure.
who would want to be me? I have enough trouble being me. So who wants to be me? But I think, and then as you're as I was preparing to exit, I continually gave my job away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if someone's in that role now, that's tough
Yeah, sure.
because you have to be brave enough to do that. But
Right.
all you can do is prepare the organization best you can. And I had a pledge. I said I want to help build an enduring organization or an
Mm.
enduring company that I would be proud to pass on to the next leadership.
Oh, I love
And I
that.
was proud about that.
I
So
love that.
that's the way I thought about it.
I love that. Well, and I think that when I think about succession, I think that every leader needs to be thinking about that because however they're going to move on to the next version of themselves, their next version of their leadership, they need to figure out and think about who's coming next. And I think as I hear you say that you started 8 years ago, I mean that's planning, and there's a lot of leaders that haven't done that, and now they're kind of wanting to get out in the next couple of years, and so it's going to be really hard.
Well, also, you've got to think about what happens if you get hit by the champagne bus.
Right, right, exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
we owe it to the people that we have the privilege to lead to have a plan in place. You don't want to wake up one day and, well, what do we do now? I mean,
yeah.
so that's why we had such an involved organization. So
Mm,
you watch out for the champagne bus.
yes, exactly, exactly. Garry, I so appreciate you sharing today. I know we've only hit the tips of the waves, but I know that you just wrote a book and it's not out yet, but I would love to have you share that with the audience if you can.
Oh,
Uh,
I'll reach over here.
yeah, that's great. Because I know that you just submitted the manuscript, and
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. I love it. Any dumbass can do it. Tell us a little bit about it. What's the premise?
It's learning moments from an everyday CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. So it's really going back 25 years and identifying all of the learning over time. And
Mm,
Ken Blanchard wrote the foreword with me. I wrote it with my writing partner, Martha Finney, who's got a wealth of experience in this area. And it's
mm,
really 25, 26 chapters of here's what I learned over time. And each
yeah.
chapter ends with what should you do? What should you do first? And what is the worst thing you could do? So
Oh, I love that. I
and
love
what
that.
should you do last? First, worst, last. So
Love
um,
that. So it's really
yeah,
practical. Really practical.
yeah, it's all practical experiences. I mean, this is
Man, I love that.
real life scar. It's real life scar tissue.
Yeah, I love that.
So although it's not out now,
Yeah.
if those that are with us, please, you can follow me on LinkedIn,
Yes, please.
and you'll see as we roll up to it to when it's coming out. So
Well,
please follow us.
I will definitely highlight it, and maybe we can even have you back when it does come out, so that we can highlight the book itself. Because
I'd be
I think,
grateful of that. Thank you.
oh, my pleasure, my pleasure, Garry. Thank you so much. I do, just from the bottom of my heart. I'm really grateful. I always love learning from other leaders who have been there, who have implemented strategies that have worked, and I've just so admired you for a long time, and really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, David. Remember, life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Garry.